Emma never imagined that a simple trip to Westbridge Mall would unravel her carefully constructed life. It was a regular Saturday afternoon, and as a 47-year-old wife and mother, her routine rarely deviated. After spending hours wandering through the aisles, picking up items for her family, and losing herself in the mundane comfort of errands, she decided to stop by the restroom before heading home. As she washed her hands, the sound of her bag slipping off the counter and scattering its contents onto the tiled floor startled her. Before she could react, a young man, likely no older than 23, crouched down to gather her belongings. His movements were swift, but his demeanor was relaxed. His face lit up with a charming smile as he handed her the bag. "You should be more careful," he said teasingly, his green eyes sparkling with mischief. "Thank you," Emma replied, her voice catching slightly as she took the bag from him. She didn't know why she felt so flustered. Perhaps it was his confidence, the kind that seemed effortless and magnetic, or perhaps it was the realization that this fleeting moment had awakened something dormant within her. She turned to leave, thinking their encounter was over, but as fate would have it, she spotted him again, sitting alone at a cafe near the fountain in the center of the mall. Their eyes met, and he waved her over with a casual familiarity that felt both surprising and thrilling. Against her better judgment, Emma walked over and joined him. They exchanged pleasantries, and their conversation flowed as if they had known each other for years. He introduced himself as Jake, a recent college graduate with a passion for travel and photography. Emma found herself laughing at his stories, mesmerized by his youthful energy, and the way he seemed to make her forget all the worries that usually weighed her down. As their conversation deepened, Emma felt a spark of something she hadn't experienced in years. A feeling of being truly seen, of being desired. The boundaries she had lived by for decades suddenly felt blurred. And though a voice in her head urged her to walk away, another part of her couldn't resist the pull toward Jake. That single encounter at the mall marked the beginning of a secret she never thought she would carry. A secret that would soon spiral into a series of choices that would change her life forever. From that moment on, Emma's life became a whirlwind of emotions she could barely control. After their initial encounter at the mall, Jake asked if he could stay in touch. First, Emma hesitated. She was a married woman, a mother, and someone who prided herself on loyalty and integrity. But something about Jake's charm, his casual confidence, his ability to make her feel alive, chipped away at her reservations. She gave him her number, convincing herself it was harmless. The messages started innocently enough. Jake would send her a text now and then, asking about her day or sharing a photo of something funny he'd seen. Emma responded cautiously at first, keeping their exchanges light. But as the days turned into weeks, their conversations grew more frequent and personal. Jake had a way of making her laugh, making her feel like a version of herself she hadn't seen in years. She found herself looking forward to his messages, the little dings of her phone sending a thrill through her that she hadn't felt in decades. It wasn't long before Jake suggested meeting again. "It doesn't have to be anything serious," he wrote. "Just coffee. Friends can have coffee, right?" Emma knew she should say no, but her fingers betrayed her. "Sure," she typed back, her heart pounding as she hit send. When they met at a small cafe tucked away from the main streets of town, Emma was nervous, but Jake's easy demeanor quickly put her at ease. They talked for hours and Emma found herself confiding in him. About her marriage, her frustrations, her longing for something more. Jake listened intently, his green eyes never leaving hers. "You deserve to be happy," he said softly, reaching across the table to touch her hand. The contact sent a jolt through her, and she didn't pull away. That moment marked the point of no return. One meeting led to another, and soon they weren't just sharing coffee. They were sharing stolen moments in Jake's apartment, where Emma felt free to shed the weight of her responsibilities and simply exist as a woman, desired and cherished. With Jake, she felt young again, like the world was full of possibilities instead of obligations. But as the weeks turned into months, the weight of what she was doing began to creep in. David, her husband, started noticing her distance. "You've been distracted lately," he said one evening as they sat on the couch. "Is everything okay?" Emma forced a smile, brushing off his concern with excuses about stress and errands. But deep down she knew she was living on borrowed time. The turning point came when Jake, emboldened by their connection, started posting subtle hints about their relationship on social media. A photo of a coffee cup, with Emma's scarf visible in the corner. A picture of a park bench where they'd once sat, caption, "The best memories are made in secret." Emma's heart raced every time she saw one of these posts, terrified that someone she knew would connect the dots. One evening, her worst fears came true. David, who rarely touched social media, happened to glance at her phone while she was scrolling. "Who's Jake?" he asked, his voice sharp. Emma froze, her mind scrambling for an explanation, but the guilt on her face betrayed her. He's just a friend," she stammered, but David wasn't buying it. In the days that followed, the truth unraveled. Emma confessed everything, her tears falling as she begged for forgiveness. David was devastated, his face a mixture of anger and heartbreak. "How could you do this to us? To me? To our family?" he demanded, his voice cracking. Emma had no answers, only apologies and a deep sense of regret for what she had done. Jake, realizing the chaos he had helped create, pulled away. His calls and texts stopped, leaving Emma to pick up the pieces of the life she had nearly destroyed. She and David began the painful process of rebuilding their marriage, attending therapy and confronting the issues that had pushed her toward infidelity in the first place. Though the road was long and fraught with difficulty, Emma learned to face the consequences of her actions and take responsibility for her choices. She would never forget the pain she caused or the lessons she learned. In the end, she realized that true happiness doesn't come from chasing fleeting moments but from nurturing and valuing the life and love you already have. As the weeks turned into months, the fallout of Emma's betrayal lingered like a heavy fog over her marriage. David had agreed to stay and work through their issues, but the cracks in their relationship were undeniable. Therapy sessions became a routine, with raw emotions spilling out in the safety of a counselor's office. Emma laid bare her dissatisfaction, admitting to feeling invisible and unappreciated in their marriage. David, in turn, revealed his own struggles, how he had withdrawn into work and unknowingly neglected her needs. Despite their efforts, the tension at home was palpable. David had become suspicious, questioning Emma's every move. "Where are you going?" he'd ask, even if she was just running errands. Emma, though understanding of his doubts, began to feel suffocated under his constant scrutiny. Trust, once shattered, was proving nearly impossible to rebuild. Meanwhile, Jake had disappeared from Emma's life entirely. She blocked his number and deleted their messages, but his presence still lingered in her thoughts. At night, when the house was quiet and David was asleep, she found herself replaying moments with Jake in her mind. The way he made her laugh, the excitement of their forbidden connection. Guilt would inevitably follow, but she couldn't deny the void Jake had temporarily filled. One evening, as Emma was scrolling through her phone, she stumbled across a photo from the day she had first met Jake at the mall. It was a picture of her shopping bags resting on the food court table, something she had snapped absent-mindedly at the time. The image stirred a wave of emotions, nostalgia, regret, and a faint longing for the carefree feeling she had once experienced. She closed her phone, forcing herself to focus on the present and the man who had chosen to stay by her side despite everything. David, for his part, was trying to forgive, but he was also struggling. One night after therapy, he finally voiced what had been eating away at him. "I'm trying to move past this, Emma, but I can't stop thinking about him. About how he was younger, more exciting. Was it me? Did I fail you somehow?" Emma's heart broke at his vulnerability. "It wasn't about you," she said softly, tears welling in her eyes. "It was about me. I felt lost, like I wasn't enough anymore. Not as a wife, not as a person. And instead of talking to you, I made the worst mistake of my life." David nodded, his jaw tight. "I want to believe you, Emma. I really do. But it's hard to forget." As time went on, small gestures began to mend the rift between them. David started leaving notes for Emma on the kitchen counter, little reminders that he loved her. Emma, in turn, made an effort to reconnect with David, planning date nights and rediscovering the bond they had once shared. Slowly but surely, laughter returned to their home, and the weight of the past began to lift. Yet, the shadow of her affair remained. One day, Emma received an unexpected email. It was from Jake. The subject line read, "I'm sorry." Her hands trembled as she opened it. "Emma, I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us. I realize now how much pain I caused, not just to you but to your family. I'm sorry for my part in it all. I hope you're doing okay and finding happiness where it truly matters. Take care. Jake. Emma stared at the email for a long time. Part of her wanted to reply, to tell Jake that she had moved on and was working to fix her marriage. But she knew there was no need. Jake was her past, a chapter she had closed. She deleted the email and turned off her phone. As she walked into the living room, she found David sitting on the couch, reading a book. Without saying a word, she sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt a sense of peace. The road to healing wasn't over, but Emma had learned that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about facing it, owning it, and choosing every day to do better.